So just a bit of an introduction to myself and the group. So we are one of 4 groups in the Institute for Transport Studies at the University of Leeds, the Safety and Technology group. The other 3 are looking at of mathematical modelling and behavioural modelling and policy. But we basically look at the interaction of people with technologies, and especially drivers with technology. So we're a very multidisciplinary group of people. Myself as a psychologist, there's a couple of other psychologists, human factors people, and engineers, and computer scientists. And a lot of our work is done in our driving simulator, and I'll show you a video of it in a little while. So the car has changed a lot now, and we're getting back to cars now, I'm afraid. Not much about motorbikes for the next 20 minutes or so. From the 1910s almost to the 1980s, it looked very much the same, and little bits are added. But there's an interesting picture there at the end about what the car might look like in the future, where you can sleep in your car and it will drive you from A to B. It sounds a bit scary, but actually that's what I'm going to be talking about in the next 20 minutes or so. So we have this idea of this intelligent car where there's lots and lots of ITS implemented in the car. And the idea is basically that we're moving from these systems providing information and warning to assistance. So as more and more assistance and support is provided, then the car moves more and more towards a much more automated vehicle. And taking this picture from the Techno City magazine, I think it's a Daimler photo, the idea is that you can do all of those things in your car in the future. So this idea of a network on wheels, you will be able to email, navigate, look at reservations, watch a movie, etc., while you're in your car. Don't shoot me, please. I'm just saying what's going to happen. Okay, so, and then there's another idea of, certainly I'm sure you've seen on a daily basis in the media, everyone wants to have an automated car by some point or another. So there's 2020 is mentioned, but 2015, that's next year, we will have automation in the car. And everyone has a date. I think the most conservative is 2030 for having automated vehicles, driverless cars. Okay, and the idea is that if there's no human, then there's no error. And so we will have safer driving if the systems are in the car. We save energy, there'll be less congestion, and it will be helpful for those who might not be able to drive, like novice drivers who are impaired or are getting older. These cars will be useful for them. And the final, we've talked about cooperative V2V, V2I, etc. So you know more about that, I guess. Is that then, whether they're automated or not, there's this other angle, which is that they will be able to talk to each other using systems and automation. Now, I put this in before I started, but I'm really happy I did. There's a bike there as well, just to have one motorbike in my slides. It's interesting how there isn't a motorbike in that picture, because obviously there are people, and it looks like a highway. Actually, it's likely that a motorbike will be there more than people. But that just gives you some indication of how that technology is moving and perhaps leaving some of you guys behind. So what do we mean anyway by driverless cars and automation? And for those of us who are doing research in the area, it's really nice to have an idea of the different levels and to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. So the car, even at the moment, one would say, with no automation, with manual control of driving, is moving more and more towards the system being in charge of the driving. So NHTSA is one of the organisations of 3 that decided last year to come up with some classification so that it's just easier for us to know that we're all talking about the same things. I must say that there's also a document by the SAE International, and actually BAST did a classification before this came out, and they're mostly the same, but not quite, and that's an interesting research area in itself. I've decided to go for the NHTSA one, even though we're in Europe, so no, shoot me again if that's but it just gives us some idea of, it's nicely set out in terms of what we're talking about. So at the moment, in terms of driverless cars, we're really talking about levels 2 and 3 of driving, where there are some systems now coming in where it really, the sort of longitudinal and lateral control of the car will be taken over by a system. But what's interesting, and I've highlighted these, is in level 2, driver is available at all times to retake control from the vehicle. Level 3, driver expected for occasional control. Now that's a really interesting difference between the two. What's occasional? You know, if I'm sort of watching a movie, is that occasional? Can I kind of come back every now and then? And what about all times? What's the point of supervising it at all times? And that's really where the research is at the moment. And actually, I think, there was a workshop recently I went to, a representative from a car company said, we don't really like level 2 or 3, we just wanted to move on to completely automated. But obviously, I think we're a bit of a way from that. So I've just got some examples there of the level 2, where basically you've got your hands off the steering wheel, your foot off the accelerator, but you are supposed to be in control. I guess the Starter project on platooning could be an example of level 3, where you go into the platoon, you switch it off, and then it's in control until you want to come out of the platoon. But again, research is very, very limited, at least on the human factors side of the consequences of these. Okay, and then finally we have this idea of this full self-driving car, and I will say a little bit at the end of my presentation about the City Mobile True projects, where one would argue that in Europe we do already have level 4 automation. Some would argue. Okay, so now just a little bit, having done a bit of an introduction, a little bit more about the human factors issues that might happen with driverless cars, and I am by no means covering everything, but just some food for thought, and then I will show you some results from some experiments that we've done on this.